Our topic is equity instrument versus financial liability under IAS 32 and IND as 32. So first we'll start with the introduction. Financial instrument. Financial instrument is nothing but a contract that gives a rise to a financial asset of one entity and financial liability or equity instrument of another entity. So the key differences lies in the issuer of contractual obligation to deliver the cash or any other financial asset. So correct classification ensures the transparency, compliance and better decision making. So next we'll move on to the definition. So first is equity instrument. So equity instrument is any contract that shows a residential interest of assets and of any entity deducting all the liabilities. So you can take the examples of bonds and non-redeemable preference shares. Next is financial liability. So financial liabilities and contractual obligation to deliver the cash or another financial asset to another entity or exchange financial assets of financial liabilities with another entity under conditions that are potentially unfavorable to that entity. So you can take the examples of bonds payable or the loans or redeemable preference shares. We'll move on to the equity instrument and financial liability. So first is equity instrument represents ownership in a company, and after all the liabilities are settled, equity holders having a right on it, so that is in residential interest. Next is financial liability. So financial liabilities and contractual obligations. So issuer must deliver the cash or other financial asset to the creditor, so that is an contractual obligation. So next it comes the obligation to pay. So obligation in equity instrument, there is no obligation to pay the money or the pay the assets back, or like dividends, those are optional. But in the financial liability, the payment is mandatory as per the agreement, and the issuer must deliver the principal interest. So next is ownership rights. So ownership rights, the shareholder get ownership right. They can note, influence company decisions and can share in profits in the equity instrument. So next is financial liability. So creditors have no ownership rights. They only have the right as to be repaid but cannot control the company operations. So next comes the fixed versus the variable number of shares. Next is equity instrument usually represents the fixed number of shares for the fixed amount of investment, like the 100 shares for $1,000. Next is financial liability. So financial liability, it represents, may involve a variable settlement such as the repayment in a changing number of shares or equivalent cash. Next difference is dividends versus interest payment. So first is dividend. First, in equity instrument, dividends are optional and depend on the company profits and management decisions. So next is the financial instrument. So it is that the instrument or the repayment of the compulsory lender contract terms conditions must be paid regardless of profits. So this is about the first five differences. So under equity instrument, sixth one, holder shares in profit and loss in the business. So equity shareholders are the real owners of the company, and the return depends upon the company performance, and the company earns profit, shareholder receives the dividends, it is left and makes a loss, they don't get anything. And this means their income is not fixed but variable with the company success or the failure. So next, sixth one, under the financial liability. So holder gets the fixed return regardless of the profits. So liability holder are not the owners, they are the creditors, and they must receive a fixed return such as interest or the dividend, whether the company earns profit or not. This is an legal obligation. So next, seventh one, under the equity instrument. So ordinary shares, non-redeemable preference shares. So ordinary shares are the most common type of the equity shares. They represent and come with the voting right. Non-redeemable preference share, they cannot take back the shares by company. So this is under the equity instrument. So next, under the Financial liability, so that is loans, redeemable preference shares. So common example is given that um, amount of the money borrowed by a company, that by the banks or the financial institutions. So such manner the borrower must repay the principal amount within a specified time. So redeemable preference shares are the preference shares that bought back, redeemed by the company after the fixed period at the option of the company. So next, eighth one under the equity instrument, that it increases the company's own capital. So money from the equity holders is treated as the company's own funds and not borrowed the money. So the company does not need to return it. It strengthens the company's financial base and it helps to the long term growth. Next, under the financial liability, eighth one, it increases the company's borrowings. So liabilities add the debt burden of the company, more liabilities and more repayment pressure. This reduces the company's financial flexibility because the cash outflows becomes compulsory. So ninth one under the equity instrument presented under the shareholder funds or equity. So in the balance sheet, equity is shown under the shareholder fund because they are the part of the company's own capital. This includes the share capital and reserves surplus. They represent the ownership portion of the company, unlike the loan which are shown under the liabilities. So next, ninth one under the financial liabilities, so presented under the liabilities. So in the balance sheet, the financial liabilities are shown under the liability section. So these are divided into the non-current liabilities. So there is a long-term loans, debentures, and next there are the short-term borrowings, creditors. It will be presented under the liabilities. So next, 10th one under the equity instrument, no obligation plus fixed for the fixed settlement, which is equal to equity. So equity means there is no compulsory obligation for the company to repay, and the fixed for the fixed means one share issued in exchange of the fixed cash. That's why the equity is permanent and not considered as liability. So this is under the equity instrument. So next, under the financial liability, so under the financial liability, any payment obligation, variable settlement, which is equal to liability. So the company is bound to make the payment in cash, interest, or even through the some other form. It is considered as the liability. So the key principle is obligation, which is equal to liability. Thank you.